To another. Go ahead, Peggy. You want to roll us in? Introduce the summit.
Oh, hi, good morning, everyone. Yes, I'll be glad to. Welcome to the number three class we're having for 2026 called the Construction Summit. We're trying to get together industry leaders for presentations and panels. And today we do have a presentation by Karins Engineering.
She froze up. Karen's engineering is going to be presenting. So what we're going to do is we're going to have a continuing education class, and then we're going to roll into a panel discussion, and we're going to talk to Ben Friedman's going to join us from CitiQuiet. We're going to have Hector that's going to continue to stay on and talk about Windows. So I was going to break it off to Peggy, and she was going to introduce all the sponsors, but I guess I'll take that. I'll let Jamie introduce herself and tell us a little bit about what she does. She's been a longtime sponsor, so we really love to have to Jamie on. So Jamie, what do you got?
Good morning, everybody. Happy St. Patrick's Day. My name is Jamie Gelfand. I'm the regional director at First Citizens Bank. First Citizens is a 125-year-old top 20 bank. In the CAB Community Association Bank Division, we provide loans and lockbox for associations. If you're working on any projects, i.e., windows and doors, roofing, etc., please let me know and I can assist with getting financing for you.
Thank
Enjoy
you.
today's class.
Thank you. We're also going to have Ben Friedman on with City Quiet. He'll introduce himself and what the company does. But if you don't know Ben, Ben's been in the window industry in this community for quite some time. Um, Peggy, you're back. We already introduced Ben and Jamie. If you want to go to number three, four, five, and six,
Okay,
we'll let you kind of take over from there.
sure. Absolutely. Okay, thank you so much. I'm having some technical difficulties I didn't expect. Yes, we do have some other sponsors that had to take appointments today. I just want to go on and mention we have Bob Aleka, he's Vice President for Communities, and we also have Michael Zirin, Vice President of Marketing for Faster IO. They are working very closely with construction projects, putting up a new streaming service, very different from cable. So take a look at this because you can take this anywhere. And I will be passing out a sponsor sheet, which will have everyone's name and contact information on it as well. I also want to mention Nicole Johnson Pendergrass. She is a partner and operations manager for Hector. They are full service CPA and auditing company based out of West Palm Beach with 4 offices around the state. If you need someone to take a look at your finances, she is awesome. So find her on the sponsor sheet. Next, we have Daniel Baum. Daniel Baum is the founder and CEO of COA Solutions. He's a longtime insurance broker working very closely and pretty much exclusively with communities. So if you're looking at a change for your insurance, take a look at it. He'll evaluate your policy and he will tell you maybe some pros and cons or maybe some things you could take a look at to keep your policy in order, especially with hurricane season around the corner. Then lastly, the wind beneath my wings is Vinteum software. Today we have Fabrizio on from the marketing team, and then we also have Hugo Honorio on from the sales division. Hugo, you want to say something about Vinteum and the websites and what you guys are doing for the industry, please?
Yes, of course, Peggy. Hello, everyone. Good morning. Happy St. Patrick's Day. My name is Hugo. I'm the head of customer success and product here at Vinteum. And Vinteum specializes in building websites and residence portal that most of you need, especially in Florida. And the process is very simple. With the information you send, we create a public-facing website and password-protected platform within 10 business days. And we also provide training on how to navigate both of them to either the property manager or the board members, which allows anyone to have full control of their platform and website. We invite you to take a look at the recording of our website one-on-one webinar and see how simple it is compared to other providers out there. If it's the case and you would like to get an easier system or you don't have a website or portal yet, we will send our information here on the chat so you can get in touch with us. Thank you very much and have a great webinar.
Thank
Okay,
you.
great. Thank you so much. And again, thank you for all you do for the webinars. And with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Rudy.
Thank you. I got some issues with my audio, my visual. Brand new warehouse. We moved in this week. We tripled our space because of our capacity, which is good news, but we got some growing pains over here, so it might be a little echoey. So try to bear with me. Hector, I'll turn it over to you. We can start the presentation. My name is Rudy Martin. I'm the Vice President of GM Painting and Construction. We're a full service painting, waterproofing, and restoration company. We handle projects from Miami Beach to Vero, everything from painting, restoration, waterproofing, parking garages. If you're ever in a question and you ever need help, even if it's just assistance to learn more about your issue, please call me, use me as a resource. I'm always here to help. That's why me and Peggy decided to put these on. Education is paramount. We want customers to feel empowered and educated so that they feel like they're making the right decision. We know this isn't easy for you guys. You're given a tough task to manage these properties, whether you're a board member or a property manager, and we just want to help as much as possible. And that's why we have this segment today about windows. Windows leak. They're installed incorrectly. There's a lot of issues out there. We want to learn as much as we can about the window and window installation. And Hector's got a great presentation. I've seen it before, so I'll roll it into Hector. Hector, you can go ahead and start the slides and we'll get it started.
Very much, Rudy. Morning, everybody. Okay. First of all, I want to thank for the thing.
You're definitely a little low. Might need to switch to the wired headphones.
Better now?
Better now. Peggy, can you hear him? Oh, Peggy's frozen.
I hope so.
Do a couple of testings. The attendees have been great with feedback, and they'll let us know if we're not here. Can everybody hear him?
Yeah.
Nope. Can't hear you at all.
You me?
Now we can hear you.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Now it's good. Okay, perfect. So I want to apologize to everybody to start. Happy St. Patrick's Day. And I wanted to apologize because my flight was delayed for 2.5 hours. So I just arrived at the airport and I took the meeting here. So I do apologize for the noise, but we'll make it work as best as possible. So I work for Karins Engineering. We are a structural engineer firm, structural and restoration heavy engineer firm. We have approximately 10 offices around Florida. In my area, particularly, is the East Coast. So I manage Daytona, West Palm Beach, Fort Lauderdale, and Miami. Hopefully soon we're going to open up another one in Orlando. But besides Karen, I'm not going to talk anymore about Karens. We're going to move forward with the presentation because I think that's what everybody wants. So let's go straight at it. So like I said, I work for Karins Engineering. The region is the East Coast, which I manage Daytona, West Palm Beach, Fort Lauderdale, and Miami. So windows. On windows and windows installations, particularly on frame walls that most of us have on our properties, 2-story, 3 stories or more, most of them are wood frame buildings with stucco or cementitious finish on the back. So there's going to be a few terms that we're going to be talking about that are going to be standard for us, and it's good to get them ahead and to know them as soon as we start. So we got the header, which is the part above the window. We got our sill, which is below the window. Our windows, like Rudy was mentioning, they leak. Not necessarily only because they're wrongly installed, but because windows, especially on a hurricane season or a hurricane event, they will tend to bend, which is normal, it's expected. They can withstand the wind, so they don't break, but that doesn't mean that they're not going to leak on a situation like that, right? So knowing that from the get-go is one thing. However, on normal events, when you have typical rain like we have in Florida, or rainy season, if the windows are leaking, if the windows are old, they can cause damage to your building, and that's what we're going to be discussing today. So during the course, we're going to be talking about the type of leaks that we have on our windows, the waterproofing frame openings that we have to do, and correct window installation steps, and why you cannot do this from the inside of the apartment. It should always be from the outside of the apartment. And this is something controversial because a lot of people, especially when you have high rise, they like to do it from the from the inside, so you don't have to get a swing stage. But that causes a lot of problems. So on a 3-story townhome condo frame over masonry, as you see on the picture here, if you look at it from the ground, you don't even think that this is a wood stick, but there's some tell signs that you will tell you that this is a wood frame building. Build height of 2006 boom, we had a lot of developers coming into Florida, building these 3 stories, townhomes, wood frame buildings. And they were producing it at such a fast pace that a lot of them had issues, or they were, I want to say, cutting corners more or less to get them faster out, which the stucco with the frame construction was less expensive. The architect provided no detail on how to construct like masonry and windows, and the flange windows typically on masonry units, they use 1/2 inch, which again, trying to get them fast out of the door, those units cause issues later on. A high-rise building frame infill walls in concrete structures, as you can see here, they possess the same kind of situation that you will have on regular buildings. A case that we're going to be discussing what we found, because it's easier for us to discuss something that we work on, and we provided solutions. So this is a real case that Karins engineering work on the West Coast. This is Sanibel, so it was on Sanibel Island. A condo built for vacation rentals. Owners are generally affluent. Serious leak problems were experienced since the building started. Once the building started, in the 80s, they still had issues. They changed the windows on 2000, which is already 20 years old windows. And in 2005, they changed it again. So that's a big, big cost. They continue to have numerous cracks appear on the stucco, numerous leaks occurred, exterior windows and frame walls were replaced again in 2010. So we saw there just a big gap between 1980 to 2000, 2005, and 2010. That is a big expense for an association. That's something that not a lot of associations can do, and they should not do. If you do things right the first time, you should not have a lot of problems moving forward. Steel framing found to be inadequate on 2010 for the window loads. No functioning drainage plane existed. So what is a functioning plane? Well, let's talk about 2 different things. Wind loads. The wind loads are defined by the Florida Building Code. That's not the engineer requirement. That's not because I want to be 100 miles per hour or 55 miles per hour. That is the Florida Building Code. I don't have options for that. So the wind load has been changing since the 80s to now. For example, they have changed dramatically, especially after, I believe, 2010, 2012, we got hit a couple of storms. Then on 15, 16, we got hit with 3 other hurricanes. And every time something like that happened, that we get hit one after the other, the Florida Building Code decides to bump up the numbers to make everything more secure. So something from the 80s that is still in operation today, it's not going to be near close to be adequate for the wind loads that we have today. So those opening on those areas have to be reinforced. The windows are no longer compliant, so they have to be changed as well. Drainage plane. A drainage plane is a way to get the water that gets through my exterior barrier. In this case, let's assume it's going to be my painting, my wood, to get it. Once it crosses that, for whatever reason, we want the water to come out of the building. We don't want it to keep it inside. On a lot. Sorry?
Um,
I'm sorry? Someone talking? I apologize for that. I took the presentation off. I apologize, guys. So my drainage plane is the section required for me for every water that comes into the building that gets access to inside that first perimeter, it have to come out. Some associations, you will see that they start sealing every single opening, every crack, everything they see, including my drainage plane where it has an exit, and keeping the water inside. And we're going to see damages at that cause on the building. So natural forces that a building will have, and I'm geeking out on here, So bear with me a little bit so you can understand it a little bit better. The gentle rain, like I explained at the beginning, is not the problem. It's going to be when you have pressurized zones or pressures into your building when you get high winds areas. Some associations live very close to the
Hector,
water.
sorry to interrupt, Hector. The presentation isn't currently up.
It's not? Sorry. Let me see what I can do here. Let's see, share again. Thank you for letting me know. So
One thing too, if I can interject while you're doing that, I forgot to mention to everybody, all the guests on today, please put your questions in the Q&A box. We do record the Q&A, but we do not record the chat box. So questions go to Q&A, and anything that we don't get to by chance, this way we can send them to Hector and he can respond to you directly.
So now can you see the presentation now?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Perfect. I apologize for that. Technical difficulties here. I apologize for that. Okay, so we were talking about, we're at the last point where we're saying steel framing found to be inadequate for the wind loads, and we're talking about the drainage plane, right? So we are, see, now it doesn't want to move forward. There we go. So, like I was mentioning, it's not the gentle rain that we sometimes get in Florida that's going to be a problem. It's going to be the one that is wind-driven rain or pressure wind-driven rain. When you get a storm, some associations that live very close to the ocean, they get wind. Like we have a property in Daytona that typical day they might get 30, 40 miles per hour wind. So those create pressure into the building. Once that force of wind hit the wall, that is my positive pressure that you will see on the sketch below. That will create a pressure to that window in that area. However, on the other side, the wind will turn around to that corner and it will create like a tornado kind of effect, a vortex there, and it will start pulling on it. That's why you see a suction on the leeward wall. The same thing is going to happen for the roof. So those kind of things, we have to play with them as an engineer and a window manufacturer when they say it can withstand 50 mile per hour wind minus 10, and I'm making numbers up, please. So plus 50 minus 10. That minus is when you get that suction area. That's why you have to look at those numbers, and the code provides you what are you going to be doing. Are you going to have the positive side and the negative side? And you have to comply with both for the code. In Florida, especially on the South Florida market, you have the infamous NOA, and most of the associations do require, or most of the engineers require, that every window has to comply with an NOA. That is a certification that it complies with the standards required for those kind of pressures. So once you get that, let's see if I can hide this. I cannot hide that. Cracks in the surface of the veneer at operable doors and windows, poorly designed flashing, and other unsealed openings will cause water to come into the building. So once you have a crack on a leeward side, on a pressure side of the windward, pressure on the windward wall, and you have a crack there, water will get through it. Again, on a frame building, not necessarily on a concrete building, but on a frame building, the water could be expected to come in. That's why you have a drainage plane. The water will come in, start going down the wall, and it should come out on my drainage plane. It is designed that way. So try to avoid
Hector,
windows. Yes, go ahead.
sorry, your microphone was muted, but right now it's okay.
Yeah, I muted quickly. Again, I'm on a very high populated area right now in the airport. So every time something loud comes up, I try to unmute it so it doesn't affect everybody. So the design criteria. Windows and doors will be designed to resist hurricane wind pressure based on ACE, which is the American Society's Civil Engineering Code, which the Florida Building Code refers to ASCE for the design. Florida Building Code will have your sections about wind load, but it will tell you always to comply with ASCE. Windows and doors will be designed to withstand small missile impact and large missile impacts. lower you are, you're required to comply with large missile impact. The higher you go up, and typically we go probably 5, 10 story high is where you get the small missile impact. Doesn't apply to buildings 2, 3, 4 stories. You have to comply with the high, large missile impacts scenario. What are those requirements? So what the code requires you for a large missile impact or a small one is that it doesn't shatter. It can withstand a hit, but it will depend on the wind load. So you can design a wind and the glass and everything else to withstand, for example, 55 miles per hour, which will generate a hit of whatever pound per square feet, and the glass should hold. It's not going to be perfect. It's going to be like you see on the pictures. It's going to break apart, but it's not going to shatter. It still protects the unit. Later on, you will have to change it, of course. But it is designed to do exactly that, protect the unit inside. However, if it was designed for 55 miles per hour with an impact of 10 pounds per square feet, and we get a hurricane, God forbid, of 120 miles per hour, and I'm making numbers up, please, 120 miles per hour, and it comes with a force of 50, 60 pounds per square feet, it's going to break the window because it can only withstand up to a certain amount. That's what they were designed for, like your car and everything else. No, doesn't want to move. Okay, here we go. There are 2 types of leaks that you're going to have on a building or on a window. You're going to have your visible leaks. So if it comes through, you're going to see it through. It's going to the water's going to settle on the sill part or on the sill part, or will go to the floor. You wipe it up. We're good to go. No issues there. But when there's stealth leaks, that means that they go into the frame of your building, especially on wood frame buildings. Actually, this happens on concrete structures as well. If they're made of CMU, most of the CMUs are hollow on the inside. If you have an opening on the outside, it could get access to that hollow area, and you will get the same situation. However, on wood frame buildings, you get rotted wood, of course, as everybody knows. So steel leaks or stealth leaks are on the cracks that you have on the windows, or if the window was not set right, or the sealants are broken. Water can get access into that system and stay inside the walls, especially if you seal every single thing that you find, including my drainage plane. It will stay inside and will cause wood rot damage. It will cause the metal framing to be destroyed, or CMU damage, like we were just discussed. So veneer system over the frame, you got the brick veneer, store veneer, metal, wood, vinyl, cementitious. The design for the engineer, or the architect, design for large overhang at rooftop. We do slope horizontal surfaces. That's why we always say 2% to get it away from the building, not going negative into the building. We design appropriate flash infrared and a functioning drainage plane. Exterior coating, which include breathable coating and water repellent treatment. And that water repellent, I want to make sure that we all understand this. It's not only the waterproofing on my horizontal surface, but paint could be considered to an extent as a waterproofing system, not necessarily, but it could be. But keep in mind the sealant around my windows, sliders, and doors are very important. They have a lifespan. The sealant goes typically between my cementitious finish and my metal of my door, window, and sliding glass door. They do break. They have a life expectancy 5 to 7 years, and Rudy can jump in if I'm mistaken here. He can give me a little bit more pointers on that. But they do have a life expectancy. Once they stop working correctly, they become harder, and you start seeing separation between them, cracking, and even breaking and detachment. Typically, what we recommend as an engineer firm, is that the sealant around my windows and my sliders and my doors will be replaced with the painting. So if you paint, typical painting process should be 7 to 10 years in Florida, typically 5 to 7, but let's say 7 years to use it as an average. That 7 year, you're replacing the sealant as well. There has been a lot of associations that I worked on that they paint regularly. The building looks beautiful, but all the ceilings are breaking apart, they're cracking, they have gaps. And I tell them and they say, no, that's okay. We're not going to address that now. No, keep it, protect it, replace the ceiling. Water gets into the openings or into the wall, you're going to have damages to your building. You're going to have situations like this picture. This is rotted wood of water coming in. The moisture, the temperature equals water rot. Everybody that has lived on a wood frame building knows that this happens, especially if you don't have proper drainage plan, if you don't have waterproofing on it. So we want to address a few of the questions now. Or want to continue on, Rudy or Peggy?
Okay, let's see what we have here. Okay, well, so far we don't have any questions, but again, if anyone wants to ask questions, you can either hold them to the end for the panel, or you can go on and chime in and put them in the Q&A box. So you can go on.
Thank you, not a problem. I am not that good, guys, so feel free to ask the questions. I am not that good. So flashing. My flashing are a sheet of metal or other material used to waterproof my joints. The picture on the right is a like a peel and stick kind of scenario that you use for flashing on a window. It is also used on other transitions in the exterior of the walls and the roof. In veneer construction, flashing requires liquid water that has penetrated the drainage plane to the exterior of the building envelope. We are always looking to move water out. So on the first picture on the right above, the first picture, it is a peel and stick that you will put around the window. The second one, the picture below, is a metal flashing that you'll have that is gonna, water might go through my veneer. When it comes down, it will hit that metal and shoot out. You see that it got a gap, a little bit of a gap at the bottom between the metal and the veneer. It's for the water to come out. You want the water to come out. You need the water to come out. There have been many associations that, oh, we have leaks, whoop, and seal those openings right away. Whereas my idea to get the water out, they keep it inside the building. See if this decides to move again. Okay. Control joints. In instances and on typical buildings, you will have, and the code requires you to have control joints. What are control joints? Control joints are sections on my exterior face, in this case, cementitious finish or a CMU, stuff like that, that you will have an area that will allow that material to move. So concrete will expand, including bricks, including stucco, including the wood, as you can always hear the cracking. It will expand and contract. It will always be moving. You want it to move where you wanted it to move. You don't want to leave that to the concrete or the veneer or whatever. That's why control joints exist, to control that movement where you want it. You will use a product for those control joints. So they are elastic products, so they can move back and forth when it's cold, when it's hot, and they will move properly. The material have relatively low tensile strength and are prone to develop cracks due to thermal expansion, which is expected. Control joints for the naturally occurring cracks to follow a straight line, which is easier to fix when it happens. Again, everything has a life expectancy. So either 5 years, 10 years, 15, 20 years, but everything has a life expectancy. On the pictures below, on a masonry construction, you will see those lines that crisscross around the windows and a little bit lower. Those are my control joints. Again, you use those to force, the code requires you to have 144 square feet of area. Then you will have to put a control joint. So nothing more than 144 square feet. So 12 by 12 approximately, right? If you have a window, if you have a turning point, there's some sections that allow you, hey, if you have this, if you have that, those serve as control joint as well. But in this case, for example, it looks very pretty, especially because everything's squared out. Every two set of windows, you got an expansion joint or a control joint there. Once you do destructive testing, what are you going to be starting to look at when you have water intrusion and you call out an engineer? He says, hey, I have to do a destructive testing to see what I'm working with. Because sometimes you cannot even determine how this window was properly installed or the sections were installed. So on the picture to the left, you're going to have a PVC corner bead, what it's called, which is give you a nice termination. The stucco will adhere to it properly because they have those openings, as you can see. But then you'll start seeing that, it has a different gap than it should have. The windows were not set correctly. On the one on the bottom to the right, you will start seeing, oh, this is deteriorated. The lath is completely rotted out. The wood inside is rotted out. That means the water is getting through to that window or that section. Depending on the location, you can typically pinpoint it to the window. Once you continue removing it and you do a moisture test, that's 35% of a moisture test. That means the water is inside. That whole section is already rotted out, so it has to be replaced. You start opening up, and typically what you will find on the corners of the windows to the outside is where typically, for some reason, you will always see damage to them. If you didn't do the waterproofing correctly or the window wasn't set correctly, my expansion joints or my sealants were not replaced or corrected, you will get water damage like you see on the left side, which actually is in connection with the window to my left corner of the window. If you open where the vents are a little bit higher up, probably you're not going to see that much damage, but to the left side, you see how bad it is because water just accumulate there. The window framing system is designed that if water goes in, it will go through the framing system down and come out of the weep holes. A lot of people seal the weep holes, which cause water to stay inside the framing system. Water will always find a way to go out, and it goes into your substrate. The picture to the right is a little bit more in-depth or closer look of that damage for that window. The window in question here, you can see that it was set way below of what it was designed probably to do. Some of the windows back in the 80s and the 90s, they have only one whip hole, which typically was in the middle, and it had a tube coming out of it. A lot of people, because they don't like to see the little pipe coming out or the tube coming out, they cut that out, seal it, and that's it. So all the water stays inside. Windows nowadays are typically set, depending on the window that you buy, to be a little bit higher and have 2 to 3 whip holes on the outside. You will see the slots are a lot bigger. It's not going to be a little pinhole, so water can come out. Those sections, if you cover my whip holes, if you don't let the window to let the water go out, whatever it gets in, you're going to see damage on the inside of your unit because you're going to have rotted wood, rotted insulation, and it's going to be a more costly situation to fix. As you can see on the picture to the left, the remaining of the exterior sheeting is already like dusting out. You see the paperback lath is already gone. On the right, my paperback lath is deteriorated completely, and you start seeing some rust on my lath. The same thing will happen to a metal stud frame wall. It is the same kind of scenario. Metal lasts maybe a little bit longer, not necessarily, depends on situations. If you're getting that much water in, you are going to have issues on your window. Rudy, you want to jump in, my friend?
No, I'm pleasantly listening, and I always learn something. A lot of this is very familiar with what we see when we're ripping out windows, especially in some destructive testing we do for some of these 558 claims. But no, I'm listening. I'm monitoring the Q&A box. People are texting me, asking some questions. So please continue. I'm going to save all the questions for the end because you're flowing, and we'll tackle these questions when you get to the end.
Not a problem. Thank you, Rudy. So on my framing system, you're going to start seeing the same thing, kind of deterioration. You got leaks at the window corners. You got inadequate connections to the floor slab at the bottom of the track. You're going to see, like you see on the picture here on the right, you're going to start seeing rust. In really bad scenarios, you're going to see that the whole framing system is completely deteriorated, which you don't have any option but to replace it. So what can an association do or an owner, including an owner in particular, if you're going to do it by yourself, but on an association in this case that we're talking about, do to obtain proper bidding or proper repairs for those kind of windows. Keep in mind that you should always hire a consultant. It's highly recommended to hire. There's a lot of engineers and very good engineers out there, architects out there that can help you to develop a proper procedure. But the first phase will always be, let's evaluate what are we having. We recently worked on a property that they had an issue on a couple of balconies and one window, and they wanted to know if this is something particular to that unit or everything else. So we developed a plan with them and said, we're going to open up ports. And this is where Rudy comes in as a contractor. They will open up some areas. We determine the areas as the engineer to see if we have other damages. That is in addition to non-destructive testing like infrared cameras, or if we can get a scoping inside or something like that. Typically infrared is a lot easier than a moisture meter. Those are non-destructive, but sometimes doesn't tell the whole story because it could be on a dry day, it could be on a nice weather, and not necessarily you can mimic a rainy day with wind by just throwing water with a hose. So in most of the instances, we go with a destructive testing to see how the condition is. Once you see the damage, then a plan is developed. So to obtain a fixed price, you have to remove the exterior and exterior finish column to column for each case, remove the existing window, reframe the opening if it was bad or if it's damaged completely. You install the new exterior and gypsum sheeting, prepare the window opening to receive the new flange window in this particular example, apply air moisture barriers to the exterior surface, which that is what you're creating your drainage plane. And I'm sorry to say that this presentation, I am lacking here a view of a drawing that shows all of those instances. It would have been a lot easier. That is something that I have on my to-do list to add later on. Then once you install your air and moisture barrier, you will install your new opening. Then the window must comply with manufacturer recommended installations. I say that because there has been, and Rudy can attest to this with 558 claims, that when you go in, they have the NOA or the manufacturer installation say you're going to have a shim of 1/2 inch. And when you look at it, it has 2 inches of a bucking, it have 2 inches of shims, and it has 3 or 4 inches long screws going in, trying to reach whatever it is that they're achieving. Those are wrong installation. It has to comply with the code. The engineer, the architect, or the owner's rep that you hired for evaluating the installation should go with those documents and evaluate it. Make sure that it's being installed correctly. Once you complete the installation of the window properly, you'll complete the waterproofing of the new window installation. That means all my sealant is going to be put on, my flashing is going to be put on if it's metal, and then you perform an AMA calibrated nozzle test. Why do we do that? You don't have to do this on everyone, even though we highly recommend doing it on the majority of them. But you want to make sure that the contractor that is responsible for the installation is doing the right thing. You want to make sure that it complies. Once everything is there, you install the new stucco, you replace your interior finish, and you should be done. All of those are items per base bid item. So you can compare one contractor against the other one. Your engineer, your architect, your owner's rep should be able to determine or prepare to you that line item scenario for, hey, we're going to remove the exterior of the window. X amount of square footage for stucco repair, X amount of square footage for wood framing, X amount of square footage for my installation. Replace the window is going to be a line item. Flashing the window is going to be installation, is going to be another one, and so on and so on. So they develop it so you can compare contractor A versus contractor B and contractor C, and you can get better understanding of where things are going. And everybody bids apples to apples. So on the pictures that you're seeing here, you're looking at not only the control joint that is coming vertical to the window, but then you have a crack that they tried to fix as a control joint going to the left side of it. When we open that up, you see on the picture to the right that you will see a lot of damage already on my system. that water has gone through, and my paper bag is damaged. My wall is already has some moisture damage inside as well. You continue to see the flashing or the drainage plane is completely damaged. It's cracking over because water has been going through my window. You see on the picture on the right, you got rust already on my jambs, which they should not be rusting at all. So those are scenarios due to wrong installation, poor maintenance, and exceeded useful life on windows. The details of a new framing, it comes from your engineer, architect. They are the one that designed the new framing system to withstand based on the new code. I'm sorry to say that once you remove a window, 99% of the building officials that I have worked for has required us to replace the window with a new code compliant one. That means that the opening has to be code compliant as well. If it's not, then you have to reinforce it, repair it, reinforce it as needed. That is the code. That's not the engineer that wants to charge you more. That's not the contractor that wants to create a change order. It is what the code requires. Here in this example that we continue on, we're talking about my bucking. We're talking about the new metal studs that we have in my header that is being attached. All of that is being inspected. Your engineer, your architect, your owner's rep should be taking pictures through the process. Because the city also is going to ask about it, but it saves you as a warranty claim in the future. Or in Rudy's case, a 558 claim, he can have the picture and say, no, this guy did everything right. Look, I got the picture from the engineer. That's not the case, it's something else. In this case, again, continue on with our example. All of the damage caused on a window, damage a wall that was next, or the wall of the kitchen, which had all my kitchen and expensive cabinets possibly damaged or deteriorated due to the water coming in through my wall. So in this particular case, we replaced the studs, the scissor stud to the tracks and everything else to build it back up to code and fix everything that we had. Your engineer, your architect, your owner's rep should check that everything is installed correctly. The drywall is supposed to be installed in a particular fashion with the correct separation of my screws going in. The waterproofing painting sealing, you should be doing pool tests. On the painting, you should be doing wet milk tests. All of that is required because you don't want someone to come in and say, yeah, I painted the whole wall and only use a gallon for a whole wall that is like, I don't know, 50 by 50 feet and use 1 gallon. Really? You really use only that? It's supposed to be X amount of thickness. It's supposed to be put in a particular way. So you have to have your engineer to oversee, your owner's rep to oversee that kind of work from the contractor. You're gonna install, especially with windows nowadays, more than anything else, they are a little bit standing up. They have a back dam for the sill, so water. Again, we want the water to come out from the building. The shims at the bottom of the flash. Keep in mind that they must comply with the manufacturer recommendation. If it's half a shim, not more, it's half a shim. Don't let them put 2 inches of shims, because I've seen that happen before, and probably Rudy as well have seen that happen before. They're not supposed to. If the manufacturer recommends half inch, that's all you can do. Then we have to change the opening or change the window. Sealant, don't skip the sealant. Sealant on a flange window, you're gonna put sealant all around my flange. Don't skip this part. A lot of people do that, especially if you're installing a flange window. That's a lot easier, and the correct way is to install it from the outside because you can set it better. Once you set it in and you're gonna start your screws, all the screws, as you see on the picture on the left, must be what is called wet seal. They're gonna have sealant around them before you insert them in. Why? Because the sealant will serve as a water protection for that opening on each individual one, as you can see on the picture to the right. All of them, you see sealant coming out. Careful. If you hire Johnny from the corner, you're going to have people that just put the sealant around it and not really wet seal my inside of the screw. Just they're going to do it from the outside alone. Then you're going to put your fastener, you double check that they're installed correctly. You're going to be putting your waterproofing, your painting, your mud set, and you should be completely done with your window. Once it's done, your window, and this is an example of how you do the AMA test. It's a rig that is put around the window that will throw water at it. On the inside, as you can see on the picture on the right, you create a little bit of a vacuum chamber and you will start pulling in. Why? Because you want to recreate the event in this case, of a 54-mile-per-hour wind. It will create a suction like we were talking in the beginning, and you want to see if it's installed correctly, because the window, if it's designed to be 55, 60 miles per hour wind, plus and minus whatever that number comes out to, you want to make sure that it does comply with that. You should be doing testing on your windows. That on a building that is, I don't know, 300 windows, you're not going to test each one. I can agree to that, but you should be testing as many as you can or per elevation. You select random testing, quality assurance, to make sure that everything is being done right. The nozzle test is calibrated to AMA 501, 30 to 35 PSI water pressure going into the window. And again, you're not supposed to be seeing leaks inside the windows. In some association, in some building official wants to do the light test. I don't know if Rudy have done this or not. For me, it was unique on a particular project. He didn't want to see anything about AMA. He wanted to see the light test. So we had to go there at night, go through the windows to make sure that no light was visible going through the unit without putting any finish. Why the building official wanted that, I don't know. But we had to go to each one at night to make sure that no light came in through the edges. So it was a particular requirement from the city, and we comply. Surfacing expanding metal bath. So, like we were talking originally, you have expansion and contraction on your building. You must provide my control joints. The movement will be different between the wood and the cementitious finish. This one will move more than the wood will move more than my cement finish, which will cause cracking. We don't want that. If cracking occurs, which it will, we want it to happen where we want it to happen. That is where my control joint will be. It will move. You allow it to move, but my control joint will protect my building. And if it cracks right there. My horizontal whip speed, a lot of people seal those, and Rudy can attest to this as well. You go to a building, oh, it's been leaking so much, we put sealant everywhere. But you close my whip seal. That the intent, like we were saying before. On my drainage plane, the water that might go through my painting, my wood will hit my paperback glass, and it will start going down. When it goes down, it will hit that whip screed that you see right there, and it will push the water out of the building. That's what we wanted. We want the water out of the building. If you seal that, you're keeping the water inside. So my control joint at the window corner to subdivide my plaster panels. Plaster stop at the window head, act as a whip screed as well, especially for veneers. We have those. So the water will come in. It will not even hit the window. It will quickly come out. Plaster stop at the window jambs as well. And my head flash embedded in the liquid applied waterproofing. You will see that there is a gap. That gap, like we were saying, is with the intent to let water out. Plaster stop with a 3-inch gap at the windowsill for backer rod and sealant. Spacers, and that is at the bottom part. The spacers at the last and fasteners to maintain offset of the surf fairing. This is the same building that we looked at the beginning. Brand new windows on the entire elevation with my expansion joint, my control joints, and everything happening for the water to come out of the building. New window installed. Keep in mind, the city will ask you to have the stickers on it until they do the inspection. You cannot close the windows. And by that, I mean the finishes on the inside of the window. They want to see all the screws going in as per manufacturer recommendation. Until you get the inspection from the city and they approve it, you should not be removing any of those. Windows typically will have their manufacturer and their code for each glass that they install. In this case, it's a PGT window. The stickers This one in particular is from PGT, plus 71, minus 71. So it can withstand the pressure, design pressure of 71 pounds per square feet, and a minus 71 suction on that corner, on that area of minus 71. So keep in mind that that's a very hefty window, but code requirement. That sticker that you see on the picture right now is the one that you remove at the end after the city approves everything. Don't take it off because it'll look ugly. Wait until the city approves everything. Take pictures. Owners, I will highly always recommend keep information of your windows. Keep information of what you put on your property. Situations that happen. This is a real example. I've been through buildings that the association now decides to replace windows and doors. An owner come up and say, hey, 5 years ago, I replaced my windows. They are code compliant. Said, okay, show me evidence. I don't have it. Then I cannot certify that. I just cannot. So that means that the window will have to come out and you have to pay again. It is a big problem just because you didn't keep a record of your window or a picture of the documents. They're very helpful and it saves you a lot of headaches if you do those. I think I was really fast on that one. I probably took 45 minutes to 50 minutes. I'm open for questions and let the panel begin.
I think it was great. Thank you. Ben Friedman has joined us. We'll give him a few minutes to come on and undo his mic and talk a little bit about it. I've got a few questions. We did have a question pop up, and this is something that we kind of hear a lot. I'm getting some more questions right now in my text messages. Someone had a question about, could you talk about windows that have reached the end of lifespan and how important that is to replace it? So it's just kind of a two-part question. Like number one, when you're doing a what's the ledger when you're trying to figure out the lifespan of everything? I had a
your milestone or Sears or your
when you're doing a structural
reserve study.
Reserve study and you have to put windows as a line item, number one, you're going to put a life expectancy of your air conditioning and of your certain elements. What do you do for windows? Because a lot of people talk about the lifespan of windows. So number one, how do you calibrate that? And then when somebody says, hey, your windows have reached their lifespan, what exactly do they mean about?
So windows will deteriorate with time, as we all know. Older windows, like for the 80s or 90s, you're gonna start seeing pitting. You're gonna start seeing that it's heavier on a sliding glass door, or the equipment inside is breaking apart. You're gonna start seeing the gaskets around the glass and metal failing. Those are indications of failing windows, and you try to estimate their life cycle. Typically, when you see windows that are very deteriorated, you already assume and understand that they have exceeded their useful life. You typically ask the association, has there any record? That's the first question that I usually ask. Any records of anybody replacing windows? Did you do a window replacement job? So that's where we get our first answers on that part. Other than that is how the appearance and how it looks around the windows that we can determine that. We try to look for stickers if they still have their stickers on. I usually take pictures of all the stickers that I can find on a window, but windows from the 80s, 90s, 2000, it's very hard to find any of those. We ask the owner as well if they have replaced it. So it's the most that we can do. Older windows, you will see that it's only one glass pane. Newer windows, typically you will see a heavier set of glass because there are two panes inside. So that gives you a little bit of an idea when more or less was installed. Rudy, if you want to chime in, my friend.
No, that's a perfect explanation. I've got a question for Ben. So you get the window install instructions, right? And you have the window install instructions, and sometimes they're very vague, and sometimes the engineer will write, not a repair, but an installation specification. Is there anything that you can do that kind of goes beyond that? If they're saying, hey, you need to do ABC, as a proven window installer and a window company, do you say, yeah, we can do A, B, and I really like to also do C and D, and it's not a exorbitant cost, but it's something to add to it. Do you ever come across things like that, Ben?
Yeah, so thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. And I got to tell you, from Hector's point of view, as a window and door professional myself, I even learned some really cool stuff on that. So I'm really glad to be a part of this discussion here. And when it comes to the installation itself, the manufacturer is going to provide a instruction booklet. Some can be extremely extensive. Some of the higher end products have pages and pages and pages of installation instructions. One thing to really keep in mind is that your window installer is following the instructions at the very least, because when there is a warranty related claim, or a leak or what have you, the manufacturer will come out there and they will go through the installation manual and make sure that you, as the installer, completed every single step, even if it's a tiny little miscellaneous piece of plastic or bumper or rubber gasket that came in the box and you're like, what do I do with this? It's just they sent extra. Probably not. So it's really needs to be understood how to do the very minimum. Doing the very minimum is never anybody's in anybody's best interest, though, right? So as a window and door professional, I always look at what else can I do to make sure that these windows and doors that I'm installing, the least probability of leaking, failing, corroding, pitting, chipping, what have you. So a couple tricks. Not every engineer specifies doing waterproofing before a window and door installation. So in a typical retrofit, you're taking your windows out, you're prepping your opening for the new windows, and you're just putting them in. Well, the extra mile and proposing to the be a little bit of a cost increment, but I think it would be in everybody's best interest to waterproof the openings before the windows and doors get installed. Also going above and beyond when it comes to glazing. So we work with a lot of curtain wall products. Curtain wall, for those of you that don't know, is a building that looks like glass and it kind of looks like a fishbowl. Well, there's two real ways that curtain wall products are manufactured and built. One is with what we would call a dry bulb glazing, which is just a piece of rubber that goes around the glass and then the aluminum sandwiches around it. And then the other option is called a wet seal with a structural silicone. So we work with a specific product where it has a dry bulb gasket. We have seen it fail, although it meets the minimum requirement, and that's how the manufacturer had it tested and approved. We figure in our budget to go above and beyond and apply a liquid or a structural silicone wet glaze to the exterior to really minimize the chance for failure. Some other just real simple things, quality of the products that you're using or your window and door installer are using are very important. Buying a tube of caulking at Home Depot isn't necessarily the best thing, but it may be all that's required on the instruction manual. So, using really high quality products that have really good warranties, stainless steel fasteners, as opposed to just, maybe a zinc screw or a regular, really could allow you to go above and beyond. The other trick that I also like to throw out there for sliding glass doors, what happens with the sliding glass door handles a lot of the time is they'll pit or they'll corrode. And that paint finish isn't necessarily the same paint finish as it is on the aluminum. The warranty for the handle might only be 1 year, but your paint finish on your aluminum frames may be 10 years if you're using a Kynar paint finish 2605 or something similar. So a little trick that we like to use is we know that being in a salt air environment and the high chance of corrosion, those handles are usually the first things to go because they get a lot of use. People put their hands on them. We like to put on some sort of lubricant like a Vaseline or from a car and coat the exterior handle itself in it so that when you go and you have your windows cleaned or you're doing normal maintenance on your own and you're wiping things down with soap and water, you can wipe the turtle wax off, which corrosion is going to stick to, and reapply the lubricant so that it's not sitting directly on the metal handle itself and pitting and corroding at a very rapid pace. So I guess the answer is, the bare minimum, sure. If that's all you're looking for, great. But as an installer, we try to go above and beyond the extra mile to make sure that the calls we're going to get, because we're always going to get calls, but the calls we're going to get happen at a much lesser rate by taking those extra steps and spending the time and money to do it the right way in the beginning.
Thanks, Ben. So part two of the question that was asked before, about the life of the windows, all these condos are stacked on top of each other, right? And we get a lot of calls a lot of times saying, hey, we have a leak in unit 2 and 3. And naturally we'll go above that unit. So a lot of people become in denial and saying, well, it's not my window that's causing the leak in 2 and 3. It could be 4, 5, 6, 7, 8th floor above. What is somebody supposed to do? What is a condo supposed to do if they have a leak on the first floor to the second floor and we have 10 stories, we have 10 units above them? What is the process of finding out who the culprit is, if it's one window that's leaking or if it's multiple windows that's leaking? Hector, walk us through kind of the investigative process of, I'm in unit 1, Ben's in unit 2. How do we know that it's Ben's unit or not unit 3 or 4 or 5? And can you kind of walk us through that process?
So that is a perfect question. I love that question. So one of the first things that I will always look for is how the building was built. Is it concrete or is it wood frame? If it's concrete building, the chances that goes from the 10th floor all the way to the first floor is very minimal. It will typically go out. It doesn't travel that far. It will find a place easier to come out than on the first floor. So if it's wood frame, that is a different scenario, and we'll start looking from the outside. But before that gives us an idea before we even get into the building. But typically, like you mentioned before, Rudy, the first step will go is to the unit above. We'll try to determine, okay, if it's on the ceiling or is it on the walls or is it on the corner at the bottom? Because if it's on the ceiling, there's no way around that. It's coming from above. The water doesn't travel up. It always travels down. If it's on the wall, then we start looking at the window first of that unit. If it's on the floor, the same way. But if it's on the ceiling, typically that's the case that you will start seeing, you go to the unit above. Then you start looking at the window. You're looking at the glazing. You're looking at the sealants. You're looking at how the bolts are attached to the structure. Because those bolts, like we show on the presentation, if they were not wet seal or they're old, that sealant is gone already, and you're going to start seeing water that can go through it. If you want to confirm all that, and that is a simple visual inspection that can be done to determine that. But if you want to go beyond that, you can do then a water test to it and try to do it start on one corner and moving along to determine, yes, and someone at the bottom with an infrared camera is very helpful. Hey, we got water coming in. And that's the way you can determine a lot better and faster.
Okay, so how do you determine if it's the window being fastened to the wall, whether it's the screw or the perimeter window sealant, or it's the window that has exceeded its life expectancy, and it's the metal to metal structure, it's the deterioration of the window, it's where the glass meets the metal? Is there a way to pinpoint it so it can go kind of, if it's a condo issue where the condo has to step in, or if it's a unit owner's issue where the unit owner has to replace their window because their window has exceeded its life expectancy? So is there a way to kind of pinpoint that so we can fully explain exactly where the leak's coming from, and more importantly, who's responsible for the repair of that or replacement?
The repair and who's responsible, it will always go back to the document from the association. So I'm not an attorney, I'm not giving any legal advice whatsoever, but you should review the document of the association, who is responsible for the windows and doors. Some associations are very clear that, hey, the doors, the windows is the owner's responsibility, and whatever happened to that and causes more damage is the owner of that unit. In some other associations, it's not that clear. The structure typically goes to the association. But if the structure is damaged by a unit owner because from the 70s he hasn't replaced the windows, then that could be an issue. How do you determine that it was the window that caused the problem? Again, you will have to do an inspection of that window, the screws, the condition of that window, and a water test will always be the most cost effective and more determined than anything else is do a water test to that window. You're muted, Rudy. You're muted, my friend.
So I got a text message right now. So reiterate a little bit more about the screws. So there's multiple things that can be leaking in a window, right? So it could be the screw on a sliding glass door. Let's take sliding glass door could be screwed into that slab. That balcony could be getting flushed with water. All the metal is good, but it could simply be going through those screw holes into the unit below. We've seen that multiple times, and we can take those screws out and we can wet seal them. And it's kind of a step by step. So, you do a water test and you find out that this is the window leaking. Okay. Well, the smart thing to do is just everything right out of the gate is to do the perimeter window sealants, glass to metal, metal to metal, do all the screws instead of doing the screws and then see if it's leaking and then doing the perimeter sealant if it's leaking. So get a line item, from the engineer, from your owner's rep, or from the property manager, and have them list every single thing that could be wrong that we can fix from the exterior of that building. Perimeter window sealants, wet glazing the screws, so on and so forth. And hopefully we can accomplish everything then. And it's going to be kind of costly. Now, who has to pay for that? You need to ask your property manager, or you need to refer to your docs. But I think that kind of puts to bed the question of, what can we do? Ben, I'll ask you, what can a property do ahead of time? What can a property do to be proactive so they're not just waiting for that leak and they're not waiting for unit 1 and 2 and 3 to start complaining about leaking? What can they do from a preventative standpoint, and how often should they do it?
Good question. So, like we spoke about, as far as, gravity pulls the water down. So there's no doubt, if you have a leak, it's got to be coming from somewhere up above. However, water is really interesting, actually. And you could have a penetration failure on one side of, an opening and see the leak on the complete other, right? Because you have some concrete falling you don't know about. And so it's really not, oh, I see a leak and that's where it's coming from. So you really got to do some potentially destructive testing to understand really where it's coming from. But as far as being, proactive, when there's a couple of different things. One is certainly when you're drilling out the screws for the sills. Some contractors, they drill the screw. They don't even vacuum the dust out of the hole. They just put a new screw in. So that's a really bad idea. So again, going back to the instruction manual, it's drill the screw, put a screw in. Well, really, it's drill the hole. It's vacuum the hole to get the dirt and debris and dust out of it that you just.
Ben, you're cutting in. You're cutting in and out. I don't know if it's your mic on your headphones.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can you hear me better?
Oh, a little bit better now.
All right. I'm not sure where I lost you, but
They're good right there.
Not sure where I lost you, but what I was saying is when you do get into drilling of the holes, you got to make sure that you vacuum out the screw holes to get all the dust and the soot out of there that you just caused by the drilling. Okay, then you're going to wipe down the area, and then you're going to apply either a silicone, some type of sealant into the hole, into the penetration. The typically stainless steel fastener in all of the sills, because if they do get wet, it's better to have stainless steel down there. And then you're going to cover the screw head with the same sealant so that you're really preventing as much possibility for water to intrude as possible. The other way to do it is that there are some products that are out on the market that are tested and approved by the state of and or Miami-Dade that do not require sill anchors at all. So wouldn't it be nice to just have screws in the top and the sides and nothing in the bottom, so that when the water does pull down from gravity, and for it to penetrate any anchor holes?
That sounds like a great idea, and that leads me to kind of my next question for Hector, and it's kind of a loaded question because I know the answer. There was a recent property that we did, and we had tons of window leaks, and we were doing the perimeter window sealants. We got involved in some of the screws. And the problem was that there was probably 5 different manufacturers of windows on the property, and there was probably 10 different installers that were on this property at any given time. And nobody had a standard. And Hector, do you think it's a good idea that a building that's going to start replacing windows and they want to replace the unit owners want to replace them on their own? They, unit 102 wants new windows, unit 204 wants new windows, unit 306 wants new windows, that they can't just call any contractor out of the phone book. Do people still use phone books? That's another question. Any contractor out of the phone book to bring any type of manufactured window in, and there isn't a standard. Do you think it's a good idea that a board will establish a standard, hire an engineer, say these are the 2 window systems that we deem suitable for your construction type, and here are 3 or 4 contractors that have already been vetted by the board to install your thing, so you don't have multiple different styles, and not every white window is the same, and you can drive by a building and say that's a different style window than that window than that window. The mullions are a different size. So do you think it's a good idea that these older buildings that are going to start getting new windows installed, that they establish a standard from an engineer?
So the short answer is yes, definitely you want to have that. Some associations that we have dealt with in the past have either they had it or they're working now to create what they called a architectural standard for their building. We're working on one right now at Melbourne, and they're going through that right now. And we set up the standard for this is a window that from now on, this is going to be installed. And now they have it also to be revised. That standard every 5 years, they're going to be revising it because code change and they want to be code compliant, and they all should look the same type of white, the same type of color. Because remember, if you're close to the ocean, the glass has to be turtle protected. So that tint is very different than a regular one that you have at Home Depot, for example. Manufacturers, installers of a particular window, they should be certified by that installer or that manufacturer to be installing that window. You cannot go, and that is a very good example, out of the phone book and get Johnny from the corner, but he never installed a PGT window. You should not have that guy install that window because he doesn't know the product. He should be certified installer from the manufacturer to install those windows.
Ben, you
I want to piggyback on that for one second too. I totally agree with that, and I also want to put out there that a lot of these manufacturers, if you're not a certified installer of them and you want to exercise the warranty, you may have an issue. In addition, a lot of these manufacturers, just like a community association manager gets credits, a lot of these manufacturers, the bigger, better ones, want to educate and train their installers. So, for example, my team will go to the factories, various factories, maybe once a year or twice a year, or they'll put on a road show for us, and they'll come and they'll recertify us time and time again, because products change, installation methods change, and there are more efficient ways to do things as you proceed.
So what is the miss? We see multiple buildings going up in South Florida. And whether they're new buildings that have to deal with a 558 claim, that's a construction defense where they find the mistake right out of the gate. An engineer finds a mistake right out of the gate. They hire somebody like Ben to come in and fix the windows that were installed, the wrong way, or a flange wasn't put in or something, like that. When these inspections are going on, you think that would be such a very important, crucial element that is getting hyper focused because it's the biggest culprit of water intrusion and deterioration. So where's the miss? What can the industry, do you think, could do better, Ben, to, especially from like these new constructions where I'm sure you've been to buildings that are 1 or 2 or 3 years old where you're swapping out windows and it's a brand new building. What could the industry do better, or is it just policing properly the current standards and codes that are in place?
So I think that it's a loaded question actually for Hector, but I think that what a building should really do is they should hire a really good EOR, right? So not only an engineer to create the specs and to collect the bids per se, but one thing where I see an association kind of drops the ball is they just rely on the city inspections. And this is, in a retrofit, of course, not in new construction, but in a retrofit, they forget to take the step of hiring that engineer, like someone like Hector or one of his associates, to be the special inspector on site. Because if you have an engineer whose best interest and they're fair to the contractor. But if you have an engineer who's babysitting this project, and it's not just the engineer that creates the spec, it's the engineer that creates the spec and then also ensures that it gets executed properly. I think that you're going to reduce the chance of have these issues resolved overnight. Instead, you're going to have them resolved in 20 plus years when the longevity runs out or you need maintenance. So having a really good team in place, I think, is important, and making sure that the execution is done properly. It's a very tedious thing installing windows and doors. It's not buying a window at Home Depot, like you just mentioned. Buying a window at Home Depot is a standard size window. Standard size open. So the city only allows for certain tolerances. We call them shim space. Certain gaps of void that can be acceptable, so that to avoid leaks. So it's not, hey, I have a 3x4 window. It's not. It's where we go and we measure, we order to the size of the open, not to what the standard size is, because that standard size may not allow you to install that window properly and or pass inspection.
So hurricane accordion shutters, those were what was required back in the day, and everybody had to protect their windows. Hurricane accordion shutters were so much less expensive than hurricane windows when they first came out. That has obviously shifted. I don't even know if hurricane shutters are installed, maybe for security reasons, but not for kind of hurricane protection. Now, what the docs say, what your condo docs say, opposed to what your rights are, is a different conversation. I'm just asking from an engineering standpoint, Hector, would you recommend, if somebody is installing hurricane-proof windows, that they remove the old accordion shutters, because the perforations in the building of the 2 dozen, 3 dozen screws can create water intrusion and damage?
We always recommend because that at the end of the day, the owner pay for those shutters, and they're very against removing them some of the times. Other times they're not even working anymore, so they're okay throwing them out. But if you're gonna keep the shutters, we highly recommend removing the screws and replacing them with new stainless steel screws that goes in wet seal, because those are the areas that you're gonna get problem at the building. They've never been touched. They never do any maintenance on those screws. And you start on concrete building, you start having spalling. On wood frame building, they're rotting out. So yeah, they should be replaced, at least the screws, if the shutter system is operational.
So I have a condo that I owned with my mother. It was the first condo that I bought in my late teens. I still own that condo. It's a 3-story condo, and at one point they asked us, the board voted and changed the docs, and they said everybody has 3 years to install hurricane-proof windows and the sliders and the exterior windows. Here are 3 manufacturers, and you have to remove your hurricane shutters. So the board went through the process of making sure that they didn't want to deal with any more damage done to the stucco and the wood frame. So that is possible that boards can take the right steps to do what they feel necessary to protect the facade of the building. And if it's mandating removing the hurricane accordion windows, then so be it. So that was just a personal experience. So Hector, if anyone has any questions, please reach out to Hector. If you think of something driving after this call, if you're looking to get kind of windows installed, reach out to Ben, reach out to Hector. If you don't know what kind of how to even start the process, if you just want a conversation before you kind of put anything on record, feel free to call Ben, feel free to call Hector. Peggy's going to send out a sheet that has all of the sponsors and all of the panelists' contact information in a few days. Wait for that. I'm sure you'll get some follow-up from Ben's team and Hector's team. And if you have any questions, reach out. We're here to help. Peggy, I'll turn it over to you and you can close us out. I'm sure you have some more classes coming up.
Great. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, thank you, Hector. Thank you, Rudy, and sponsors, and Ben. Thank you for coming off vacation to do this. And I just want to mention that next Tuesday on the 24th, Ben has a class himself. So we're looking forward to putting that class on with CitiQuiet Windows and Doors. And then we also have on the 31st a great class coming up again on reserves, put on by Will Simons of Association Reserves. So a couple of great classes are coming. And then I will send out the sponsor sheet along with the recording and the slides from today. And we do appreciate you following us. It is St. Patrick's Day, so put your green on. Otherwise, you're going to get pinched. But good luck with all the things you're doing. And look forward to seeing you on the next time. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.